So with the part 2 of the Fake Lab not being too far away, as it does start like 10 days after the 4.4 update, today I want to talk about Rin and if she is worth your hard-earned Jades. First, we're going to be talking about her in general, going over her kit briefly, talk about upcoming things and also reruns that should be happening, just so you have more perspective to consider, because depending on the reruns, you might have better priorities. Then we'll touch upon her vertical investment, what makes it good, what makes it useless in like certain teams and not. And then I also do gotta mention the future upcoming characters, which when I'm uploading this, there's not going to be that much time until they do get drip marketed, so if it's wrong, it's going to be a bit awkward, but I will have to mention them just in case. And then finally, if Rin is going to be worth your Jades at the end. I will be talking about both her Emiya teams, which is Archer. I'll try my best to say Archer instead of Emiya, but I also will be touching upon her own DPS, and by that I mean the main DPS teams for her. Stuck grinding in Honkai Star Rail? Need stellar Jades fast? We've got you covered. Head over to U7 Buy, your ultimate gaming hub for safe, fast, and cheap in-game top-ups. Whether it's Star Rail or your other favorite games, U7 delivers instantly and players love it. Check out their Trustpilot reviews, they're actually top ranked. On the Honkai Star Rail top-up page, you can recharge your account in seconds. When you head over to the page, all you need to do is pick the pack you do want, enter your UID and server, and buy now. If you want codes and coupons to apply, be sure to create an account for proper savings. USD is a recommended usage currency for best saving. Once everything is set, you can see the savings you're about to get. Want even extra savings? Be sure to use code PRESR at checkout for 5% off. Perfect for last minute pulls or surprising a friend. Click on the link in the description, recharge fast, save more, and keep blazing those trails. So Rin is a Quantum Erudition character. She has the same playstyle similar to Archer, not really, but I mean like the SP consumption type. She has a regular skill and an enhanced skill. The enhanced skill is where all her damage is loaded. She has an ultimate that is able to make enemies vulnerable, but she actually is able to be ran as both a main DPS and sub DPS thanks to her kit. However, her main DPS does require slightly more investment. I'm not gonna say slightly, it's pretty much just wanting to stack defense shred and stuff with good teammates. So there's a good amount of investment, but we'll talk about that a little bit as we are still just going over her kit. She has a regular talent, which is she increasing her own crit damage when someone on her team consumes or recovers skill points. And that unlocks the ability for the actual enhanced skill, since every skill point consumed or recovered gives Rin a gem energy reaching 15 or higher, and or if current skill points are 7 or more, she gets the skill enhancement. She also has a very unique joint attack with Archer himself, which is able to be launched if Archer uses his skill actively 5 times, so you do need to consume 10 SP to get it, or if there are 3 or fewer skill points. So if you consume it to the point you get lower, that's usually how you're gonna proc it, and then it will actually proc the joint follow-up attack between them, doing damage based off the 100% of Rin and Archer's attack, and will also recover 4 skill points so you can keep firing with Archer. Although the joint attack cooldown does trigger only once and resets at the start of Rin's turn. So if you have a very weird cooldown, and by cooldown I mean turn rotation, there are times where you straight up might not get it. This is primarily dependent on how your team is speed tuned. If your Rin is faster than your Sparkle, you are able to get this every single time unless your Sparkle at some point laps your Rin. However, if you have a really fast build on Sparkles, so let's say like 170 plus with Von Walk, with Eagle, with Dance setups, then it becomes a lot harder for Rin to actually lap her. But if you just have a generic build with Sparkle at like hyperspeed 160-ish, that's very easy for you to build Rin up. Since now we move on to her traces, she does have a trace that gives her 20% speed when entering combat or using enhanced skill. So you can use this to your advantage to be faster than Sparkle. For the Archer team, you are actually able to build her even if she is slower than Sparkle. The entire point is just to ensure that she doesn't get lapped around 2 times before Sparkle, because then it's just a little unoptimal. That's only for people that have a really fast built Sparkle. Otherwise, you just ideally want your Rin to be faster so you can proc the joint attack every time, especially since Rin's own personal damage on the Archer team is not great. Rin being on the field also is able to increase maximum number of skill points by 2. Rin's own attack increases by 150% and 15% quantum res pen, and also specifically will apply to Archer if he is on the team. So Archer also gets a bunch of attack and quantum res pen. Also, Rin using her ultimate gives her 12 point of gem energy, so when you do get it, you get the vulnerability and a bit of stuff for Rin herself. So this kit, you are able to utilize it as a main DPS, but you do want investment, which we'll talk about in a bit once we do get to the vertical investment part. But you can see the kit is primarily as the sub DPS slash support for Archer teams, as the joint attack does a lot of the lifting and enables Archers to do a lot more damage, and the joint attack adds up to a good amount throughout the battle as well. And since you're able to further increase the skill point limit, you can have more to burn, which can help you get closer to just burning all 10 to proc the actual effect, or you just get closer to 3. And Rin herself can also burn skill points, so if you do need to be lower to proc it right away, a lot of stuff can be done. She enables a lot of things you can do. But we do want to talk about actual reruns to consider now, because depending on your account, some of these might be very valuable. The live stream is very soon, so do take this with a grain of salt, as this is also reliable info, but the best thing you can ever get is always the live stream confirmation. So as I'm uploading this, it's going to be like 4 to 5 days till the live stream, so do keep that in mind. However, in the 4.4 update, it seems like the reruns for the first half is going to be Sparksy, Evernight, and Permanentary Danheng. All these characters are in high demand, and all of them have good vertical investment. Danheng has literally been our latest actual sustain, unless you count the Noble Flare Wopo, but Danheng is still very valuable. He has good vertical investment with a good light cone, a good E1, and a really good E2. So people are nonetheless going to be looking for that. Evernight, staple on Mono Remembrance. You can't really call it Mono Remembrance without Evernight, because she's just that important. Not only that, having a crucial role, she has a really good light cone, a fantastic E1, which practically fixes the single target problem in Remembrance team, and then one of the most broken DPS E2s in the game to this day. It enables you to run her as a pure main DPS if you don't want to actually run the full Remembrance team on its own. So there's a lot of potential with that, and a lot of people are going to be seeking that out just because it is so strong. Even on the Remembrance team, it is just so strong. Sparksy herself, if the people who did want to skip her in the beginning, especially, just in case she didn't end up being utilized for the actual relation teams. However, now, primarily for the Silver Wolf SP, it's seeming to be that she wants to stay on there. Of course, that can change later, but for now, it's very much utilized. She also has a good E2, which is great for her own main DPS potential, but also for Silver Wolf if you do have Silver Wolf SP at E2. Currently, without the last elation slot, you can't utilize it. However, E2 Sparksy actually enables you to utilize it right now. And her Lycone is also good to have, as she's able to burn even more skill points with it, provide some buffs, as her role is like the sub DPS, also some amp, and also the skill point consumer for Silver Wolf, so you can keep procking the boxes. So the first half is very stacked in that sense. The second half is a lot less so, with it being Anoxa, Aventurine, and Jade. Anoxa in general is notorious for having probably some of the worst vertical investment we've ever seen. So for him, it's a lot less much of an issue. You just kind of pull him, maybe you pull his light cone, or if you already have the Herda one, then you just are good to go. But not many people are going to be looking out to get him, I don't think, even though he still has like that crazy low cost guy clears. We're already decently past, and I mean like an over a year standpoint since he came out, so he's not gonna have that much priority since he's not like a character you have to have. Yeah, like I mentioned, he has bad vertical investments, so not many people are gonna look out for that for the people that do own him. So if you already own him, you have no reason, and a lot of people probably are not going to go for him in general. Flip side, Aventurine, while still solid because there's not many like shield options, he's still outdated mainly because of Danheng. So people's sustain slots are usually just full of either having Danheng, and then your other slot is usually some healer, usually in the form of Hyacine, even the buffed Wopo. Aventurine's value isn't like nothing, but it's not like high enough to summon for, especially now. And then for the people that have him, it's probably only going to be the people that have him already at like E4 plus because they were aiming for E6, so they're going to go to complete him. That's kind of it. Otherwise, he doesn't have necessarily much value as a character. And Jade, unfortunately, as much as I hate to say it, she's just not really a character ever worth considering anymore until she gets buffed, which I hope she does. She kind of has like the slot in the Herda team, but like even the Herda herself is a big struggling character, so that's not really much to say there. Fear Fiction specifically has, you know, gotten pretty chill, and there's a lot of stuff, and you can straight up use single target characters to burst down the boss in that mode. So you don't really need a quote-unquote pure fiction specialist. She has setups where she can work outside of it. I've done it for the longest time. However, it's just not worth really going into. And then if you want the single target synergy, you have to get E1. So Jade as a character is not going to be too valuable. So the second half as opposed to the first half is just nowhere near when it comes to value. So that's what the reruns you do want to consider. And then future character potential, just because we can knock that out right away. As I'm uploading this, the same day, depending on your time zone, is going to be the drip market for the first half character. And then the day after is the second half character. So this is like not really much worth to say just in case it ends up being wrong, but it is very likely to be Robin SP and also Aventurine SP. Robin SP said to be like a Mono Remembrance character, well, a replacement for Castress, which I assume is just going to be like, yeah, we have her for Hypercarry Evernight. And she's also said to be like for the Himiko team. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So we're just going to have to wait and see on that. But it is good to consider because a lot of people will summon on Himiko. So the after support is going to be very much wanted. And also if she is for the Remembrance team and the Evernight slot, for the Evernight fans, I'm sure she is going to be requested to be pulled if she does do that. And then on the flip side, Aventurine SP, one, it's Aventurine, so W, but also just he's going to have big value because he is going to be a part of the Bladeville team from what it does seem, as a solo elation character that doesn't really want to be ran with other elation characters. which is cool as hell. I'm so glad they're doing that. I'm so tired of just like Elation wanting mono Elation. Like I don't want that. And it's also Blade Veil, which is one of the strongest team and the current strongest wheelchair you can possibly get. And he's going to elevate that team. Do you know how scary that sounds? He's going to elevate that team to a higher level. I honestly can see the team being the best team in the game, like by far, once they do get it, until like Elation gets like Pearl or something, if that ends up happening. So Adventure and SP for the people that have Blade and Astral, or if you have Blade and you're waiting on Astral, that is going to be a very, very, very valuable pickup if it ends up being true. Again, take that with a grain of salt because the characters themselves aren't confirmed. We'll see in a few hours, but it's most likely with the info we did get, and also the kit stuff, that will have to wait a bit, but that's seeming to be how they will function. So you do want to keep that in the back of your head just in case you are into these set teams. Now we loop back to Rin, her vertical investments. So for archer teams, it's a bit different since all you really want to do is just get her E0 S1, as her S1 is able to provide crit rate for Rin, but also giving everyone on the team 20% defense ignore and then more skill damage for Rin. So that's one of the stopping points. If you want to go further, then you just go to E2 because the E1 is strictly really for her main DPS, as that's where the dupe really does shine. However, for the Emiya teams, it is not really that important. Her E2, however, is able to increase Rin's own damage by a bit, but also skill damage for the team, making it 130% of the original value, which is always an insane increase if you were doing good damage. So Emiya's arrow shots are going to do significantly more, and that would be the other stopping point. So that's like her early vertical investment. Her light cone across both are good, and funny enough, because she does want that defense ignore stacking or shred, she can actually use some other options that are like a little weirder. But yeah, just looking at the significant vertical investment that she has on her own side, the light cone and the E2, super valuable for actually her own potential as well, but also the archer teams. That would be it. And then when it comes to her own main DPS, the E2 is still very valuable, but then her E1 becomes a lot, and I mean a lot more value, because now gem energy consumed by a single enhanced skill being 30 or more gives Rin shadow gem equal to the same amount, which when you're running her main DPS, the whole point is to really just stack a bunch and then have it like Cerebro cloned. That's kind of how you run it, but also while possessing the shadow gem, skill will be enhanced to the enhanced skill. Enhanced skill consumes all shadow gem and does not trigger the effect of converting skill points into gem energy and doesn't consume the gem energy. So you're able to pretty much just get the enhanced skill at like crazy amounts for free. So you're able to do a lot with that stuff. So that also just enables good uptime on her damage, and is just in general a very, very, very potent dupe and a very much practically required dupe when it comes to her main DPS. And same reasons I mentioned for the E2. That is very much just wanted if you can get it, because it's just going to be a big increase. If you're doing a lot of damage, original damage increases are always going to be insane increases. So for main DPS, E1 and 2, both super valuable, especially E1. Her light cone across both teams, valuable. And then when it comes to Archer and it comes to dupes, then her E2 is the one you want to look at. The E1 is nowhere, and I mean nowhere near as valuable. It's still fine because you still can get some stuff out of it, but as opposed to the main DPS, it's not even close. The E2 is way better for the archer teams. But hey, you have to get E1 to get E2 anyways, so it doesn't really matter, but it's something to actually mention. Finally, if Rin is worth your teams, you're an archer main in any way, shape, or form, while he still performs very well because his character is just broken. Outside of Rin, just get Rin. She's going to be valuable. She's going to be on all his best teams. You're going to want Rin. She's going to perform great. It's really that simple. But when you look at her main DPS side, honestly, I only recommend it if you do have good vertical investment in your team. Common actual teams with her is always Sparkle, by the way. Like, Sparkle is a non-negotiable thing. Similar to Archer, Sparkle as a main DPS, Rin is not going to be a negotiable teammate. You're going to want Sparkle. Ideally, E2 Sparkle at that for the defense ignore. As I mentioned very early on in this video, the defense ignore stacking is what makes her do a lot of damage. And so you're going to want dupes that help with that. So Rin S1 gives you 20%. Sparkle E2 gives you 30%. That's 50% on its own. Then something like Cerebro, because Cerebra's on some of her best teams, if not her best team. When it comes to main DPS, her E1 is able to provide like 16% defense ignore. And when it becomes Peerage, it becomes an additional 20% defense ignore for skill damage specifically, which is going to be all her damage. So you're going to really want that E1 Cerebro, you're really going to want that E2 Sparkle, and then you're going to want Rin's own light cone because you just really, really want to stack up that defense ignore. That is going to be the big substantial difference. If you try to do something without the defense ignore and you're at a lower value, let's say maybe around like 20 to 40, as opposed to someone who actually has the dupes and you go up to like the 80s to 100s. Same thing can be said for any character. The significant damage is going to be increased, but Rin without it is a lot less usable, since the entire playstyle is to build up a bunch and practically one-shot. That's kind of how the Rin main DPS playstyle goes. So if you are someone that has the vertical investment in the support she wants, i.e. again, Cerebro E1, Sparkle E2, and you are able to at least pick up the E1 and also S1 for Rin. That is going to be two very much required ones, especially the E1. That one's practically non-negotiable for the main DPS. Then she would be a main DPS you can have fun with. That's kind of the only cases I would recommend it. And then if she's not worth your Jades, if you don't use Archer, not much point there, obviously, because then the joy attack's not going to exist. And for main DPS, if you don't really have the investment in the supports, like you have E0 Sparkle, you have E0 Cerebral, or you just don't have Cerebral, or you don't have Sparkle, especially if you don't have Sparkle, by the way. If you don't have Sparkle, honestly, don't bother. And then if you're not able to at least get the E1, as that's going to be big, then it's not going to be really worth it for you. That is it. That is if the Rin is worth your Jades. Don't know why I said the Rin. It's just Rin Tohsaka. I do hope you found this video helpful. If you did, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon for future videos like this, along with all other tips and style content. And I'll see you later. Peace out.